Hello and welcome to the Thread to Mend podcast. My name is Taylor and I'm coming to you from Baltimore, Maryland. This is a fiber podcast about all things fiber related, whether it's knitting, spinning, fiber prep, sometimes crochet and sewing. I want to start out with saying a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. You don't know what it means to me to see that people out there are interested in hearing about these things. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and leave a comment below. Introduce yourself if you like. I look forward to hearing from all of you, and I'm excited to build connection and be a part of a community online. I do have a winner for my giveaway last week. I haven't even drawn it, so I'm going to add the name of that person below. And I'm going to contact them by replying to their comment and reaching out to them with my contact info so that they can give me their address. So congratulations if you're the winner, and thank you so much for participating in that project bag giveaway. I haven't made any new project bags this week, but I do intend to make some soon. I'm just waiting for the inspiration to strike me. And here we go. I have 3 things I want to show you this week, so this is going to be a brief episode. The first is my Techno t-shirt. I guess it's a sweater, but it has short sleeves. I could have finished this last night had I stayed in, but I went out for a friend's birthday and practiced some knitting discipline of putting down my knitting and living a life. And I'm kind of glad I have the opportunity to show this to you one more time before it's finished so that I can go a little into my thought process since last week mentioning it. I have knit up the body. If you're not familiar with this design, it starts from the bottom up with a lace chart panel, and then you'll knit stockinette up the body. It's it's a drop sleeve design. And I was trying it on as I knit, and I finally brought the shoulder together on the first side, and I tried it on, and I realized that it was a little tight underneath my armpit. Now let me just say, I read the instructions about how important it is to gauge swatch this design. Apparently, test knitters went as high as a size 7 needle from the recommended size 3. I've always pretty much matched gauge with the recommended needle size, and the real reason why I didn't swatch and I went with the size 3 needle is that I bought 2 skeins of yarn. Now, I'm an extra small size person. I go to knit size small no matter what, but because this project required 760 yards for the extra small, and the yarn that I purchased, which is the Fiber Company Cumbria fingering yarn. I bought this online from yarn.com with a gift card I received for Christmas. I love to buy yarn from yarn.com when I'm already familiar with exactly what I'm buying, and I've seen this yarn in the past at stores, so I knew how it felt and what the colors looked like, and I thought I'm just going to round up to use this gift card and buy 2 skeins for this project. Well, had I looked at the yardage of this 100-gram skein, I ought to have bought 3 skeins. It has only 328 yards per skein. I was banking on whatever fingering weight skein of yarn I buy to have at least 400, like most sock skeins typically have, so that I would reach the minimum yardage requirement for at least the extra small. So the yarn came, I checked my yardage, and I'm like 100 yards short of the small size. So I was like, no matter what, I'm making this work somehow, even if it has to be shorter than I wish it to be, which I just kept going with the body. I probably could have separated for the sleeves sooner, but I end up with 16 grams of yarn left over for the sleeves. And, let me just say, I tried it on, and I was like, this is going to be tight around the armpit. So after the last step, before matching the back and the front shoulder together, I just ended up knitting back and forth about 6 rows. So I added close to 1 inch to the diameter of my armhole. Now when I measured my diameter, I measured this length multiplied by 2, and I was on track to have the right size armhole opening. So I'm hoping that once it's all kind of in place as it is now, like sewn up and on my body after blocking, that this is going to loosen up a bit, and I can tell just by its give that it'll be enough to wear comfortably, but still rather small. It's not going to have that oversized look that other Tegnas might have. So before casting on this sleeve, I measured my yarn. Again, it was 16 grams, so I know I can knit up to 8 grams and bind off and have 2 sleeves. So this is not the worst project to be playing yarn chicken with. I just have shorter sleeves if I need to. Of course, I would have knit a bigger size if I knew I had extra yarn. So if you're thinking about casting on a Tegna, look at your yardage. Maybe do a swatch. That would probably serve you. But I'm excited to just keep working on this today until it's done and block it out and try it on. If it ends up not fitting me, I have a person in the back of my mind who I would love to ship this to. But we'll see. I'm excited to wear this to the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival in May. So that's my Tegna tee. I did knit one other item. I recently cleared out my yarn drawers just to take inventory of what I have. I always do that before planning to buy more yarn. I find it inspiring to pick each skein up and determine what it's going to become. And I like having a queue of projects. So I have a few sweaters queued, a few shawls queued, where I already have the pattern and the yarn picked out. And I'll often choose a yarn I like the least and cast that on for a random project that I either design on my own or find a pattern to modify from. And so I basically did that with one of my earliest hand-spun skeins of yarn. So when I first got my Kromsky menstrual spinning wheel, I spun a lot of bulky skeins of Corriedale fiber. One of these skeins I over-dyed with, I think this is black walnut, but this is black walnut without a mordant. Black walnut has enough tannins in it that it actually doesn't require a mordant. Although if you use one, more dye is going to kind of get into the fiber. But that's why this came out really light. And I knew that this skein being so bulky might not be enough for a hat, so I pulled from my natural bit of extras. This white fiber I had like 5 or 6 skeins of it that I knit up pot holders for like hot pads as gifts to Brian's family. So bulky hand spun less than desirable yarn does have a purpose, and often that purpose is pot holders. But I just wanted to use this yarn and get it out of my drawer, and I have a lot of hats that I don't like wearing. By a lot, I mean a few. Almost every hat that I've knit so far, which is not many, I just don't love the way they look on me, or I don't love the way they fit, or I don't love something about it. So I thought I would just knit a hat with this yarn I really don't like and see how that goes. And I knit this design. It was just simple 1x1 rib for about 2 inches. I knit 1 row in that same color. I switched to the light color and knit 2 rows. Switched back to the cream color, knit 1 row, and then I purled for 4 rows. Knit 1 more row, switched back to white, knit 2 rows, switched back to cream, knit 1 row, and then I purled 4 rows. And I kept doing that 2 more times until I decreased at the top. And I think that I decreased every 3rd stitch. So I would knit, knit, knit 2 together, knit, knit, knit 2 together. And then on the following row, I would decrease every other stitch. So the first 2 stitches I knit, those I decrease together. And then I'll knit into the previous decrease stitch so that it felt kind of even. And then I did that a second time. So here's 1 and then 2. So I did my decreases on the rows that I knit, and I just purled the rows that I purl. And I came out with this kind of neat honeycomb hat. Let me try putting this on and see how it looks. So it's very like cozy, wintry, warm. And I haven't blocked it. So this is like straight off the needles. I think that when I block it, it's going to get really big. So I don't know if I'm going to or not, except I want it to be maybe more slouchy so that it kind of like has more shape, more of a slouchy shape. So this stretched out. I actually wore it to bed because I washed my hair before bed and I just finished this hat and I just wore it to sleep. I kind of blocked it on my head overnight. Yeah, so I don't know. I just don't know how hats look on me, I guess, because like I have so much hair and I don't want to look like a, I don't know, like a bean. But this is my hat. And I think I'll wear it when it's cold. I think that this is the hat I will turn to keep me warm. You can see that I'm probably doing a good enough job stretching it out without blocking it. So I might as well block it and just know what that's like. And then maybe I'll have like a neat kind of tam. So that's my hat. I have just a few more things to show you that I worked on this week, and they're all spinning related. So if you're just here for the knitting, I hope you have a great day because this is all about spinning. The first thing I spun was on Saturday. I plied a bobbin of singles I had previously prepared that were the yellow, and then I spent my Saturday spinning another bobbin of the pink fiber onto one bobbin to then ply back into a 2-ply with the yellow. So I marled yarn here, and you can tell that marling will show any inconsistency in the thickness. So there are some strands that are more yellow, where the yellow is thicker, and some strands where it is more pink, where the pink strands are thicker. That streak there you'll see of a different color, that's just extra singles I had at the end of a bobbin that I started spinning off of. Each time I spin a bobbin of singles, I'll pick up from where I left off if I had extra from a previous spinning project. I pretty much only do that when it's from the same fleece of fiber, when the fiber's from the same fleece, so that I have like a mini skein of remnants made into a 2-ply that I could use for any sort of project, whether it's mending or maybe a cuff or toe or heel to a sock. I haven't actually worked with any of my fingering weight handspun yarn yet. I've been hoarding it away for a large sweater project that is to be determined. But that's sort of how I just manage loose ends. That's how I tie up my loose ends. I just keep plying them onto whatever is being worked on, and I end up with a little extra bonus yarn that I just would rather not sit somewhere on a bobbin taking up space. So that is exactly how I acquired this mini skein. I, on Sunday, spun 2 bobbins of singles of this mixed fiber, and I never weighed it out beforehand because it was such a large volume. I thought, why don't I just keep spinning until I feel like I've spun about half that basket, and then I'll switch bobbins, spin the rest, and ply them together to make a 2-ply. Well, I did end up with a little extra fiber on one bobbin, and so I spun that gray fiber onto whatever was left over from the end of this one. And this full, I think this is 23 grams or so, is a little bit of every skein of fingering weight I've spun. It's a little bit of the light green, brown, and blue. And then I ran out of that and I used this little extra bit of yarn I had on a little bit of singles yarn that was a merino. So all the white fiber that you see plied is merino. And as I have not yet mentioned, the gray fiber is Cormo mixed with merino. And I'll just show you that skein I spun, which is this. This is 123 grams, I think, of fiber that is Cormo Merino Cross. Now, I think standard Cormo sheep are always white. And so I suspect that this Cormo sheep was bred with a brown merino sheep. And the fleece itself was mostly dark chocolate, blacky brown, and it had a few chunks of white. So when I washed this fleece, I separated out the white fiber and I separated out the fiber of white and black that are mixed, and I separated the black fiber so that I have a pile of all black fiber. And the pile of fiber that was black mixed with white, I combed together. I didn't blend it 100%. I let it be what it was after just combing it out, and that's what I spun. And so I thought that there was going to be a lot more white in here when I was spinning singles, because there were times that I came across fiber that was mostly light with a little bit of black throughout it, but mostly white as it was spun. And when it was plied, there's very few bits in here that are all white at all. Like, I don't think that any part of this spin that felt very white in the singles was plied back on another area that was very white. The closest might be here, where you can see two very light gray singles plied back on one another. So this is also a very barber pulley yarn. This is actually two separate skeins because I was spinning and I didn't measure the amount of fiber I had by weight, and I could no longer fit any more yarn on one bobbin. So I just spun a small amount onto a second bobbin, and I just put them together as I wound them up. This yarn is a little over plied, which I like in theory. I like the way it looks in the skein, but I need to knit with it and know whether I like the way it feels. If you see me looking over to the side, it's because I want to make sure I have things in front of the camera. I don't know. I have this really funny setup for my podcast. Maybe I'll take a photo of it so you can see, but it's I have hanging from my chandelier a mirror, and I position the mirror so that it reflects back the screen of my iPad, and there's two candlesticks behind it holding it at an angle. It works, but now you know my secret. So anyway, this yarn reminds me a lot of Jill Draper's yarn. It's a heavy worsted weight. I was really surprised when this came off the bobbin how thick it was, because I thought I was spinning it just a tad thicker than fingering weight, and I did my ply back test and it looked like it could have been worsted, but I don't know, it's like striking how little the difference in fiber going between your fingertips really boils down to when you're spinning fingering versus sport or DK and then worsted. It's like the minutia of like all of it. It's just, yeah. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going to knit with this anytime soon because I really don't know what it wants to be yet. It would make a really great hat or really nice mitts. I think that I would like to knit something larger with this to avoid like striping. I think this could look, depending on how much contrast I find between this and the black fiber from the same fleece, I think that this would make nice color work, like a nice color work skein. So I'm excited to prepare some of the dark fiber from this fleece and spin that into a skein of the same weight. I already have prepared the white fiber from the same fleece, so I'll probably spin that first just to get it off my shelf. I keep my fleeces in, I keep them all washed and in pillowcases so that they can breathe and moisture can kind of move in and out. Our house is rather dry, but like the air is dry because it's winter and the heat is on. But in that, I keep cedar wooden discs that I freshen every so often with lavender essential oil and cedar essential oil. So it has this like super fragrant smell to keep away any bugs or mice. I don't have an issue of mice in Baltimore City because I have a healthy cat colony outside, which pretty much patrol the perimeter. The only mice I see in the city around here are dead ones, which I'm okay with. Anyway, that was a dark note, but yeah. So I when I prep fiber, either hand combing it or combing it on my drum carder, I keep it on a shelf, and I don't want it to sit out on that shelf for too long. I check in on it all the time. But, you know, the spring is approaching. I think that the greatest risk to my fiber supply left out is getting like moth eggs and eaten. So I'm attempting to spin all of the fiber I have prepared, which is very little at the moment. And then I'll start hand prepping more that I have dyed up and ready to go. I'm not sure if you can see it, but behind me I have a basket here of fiber that I previously dyed with black walnut, and this is the last batch I have dyed from this fleece ready to go, and that's the same Cormo cross fleece that I bought at Maryland last year, and that is from, this skein is from that fleece. Now that fleece was almost twice the weight of this fleece, because the fleece I bought at Rhinebeck, the New York State Sheep and Wool Festival, was heavily skirted and super clean. Like, this fleece was managed and prepared for hand spinning. It was, I guess, like 4 pounds, and I paid the same price as I did for about 8 pounds from Maryland Sheep and Wool, but the Maryland Sheep and Wool fleeces were much less skirted, meaning that all of the fiber that was shorn from the animal that was close to the belly or the legs, or even the rear end, it was all still there, which you can choose to skirt yourself, or if you're like me and you're new, I mean, that was the second and third fleece I'd ever purchased and scoured myself. I was hesitant to get rid of any bit of it. Of course, the worst bits I was happy to remove. And I don't know that skirting more of that fiber would have made the processing easier. It could have, but I find that the choosing of that fleece was, anyway, I won't get into it, but at Maryland Sheep and Wool, if you're buying a fleece, you're going to find that they weigh a lot more, and they're going to cost the same amount, not per pound, but in total. So it feels like the skirting that went into the Maryland, the skirting that went into the Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool fleeces is kind of like built into the price. It's like you pay the same amount, but you get less fiber. You just get better fiber, like a lot better. And that might have everything to do with the fact that although I got into the barn like the minute it opened to buy this fleece, I'm sure that there are 5 other people minimum like looking for the exact same thing I was and got it and bought it, because there was a line of people to like ready to buy their thing before I even picked mine out. I think I took a lot of time deciding, and I think that there are a lot of volunteers there that probably get first dibs and then kind of get to make their transaction as soon as the door opens rather than like get in the door as soon as the door opens. I would really be interested in finding out how I can volunteer at the Maryland Sheep Removal if that's the case. So this fleece is like really close to spun. I have 2, 4, 6, 7 skeins spun from that fleece, and I have at least 2 more to spin, at least. And so that's pretty exciting. I probably could knit 2 sweaters from that single fleece. It's funny, when you're holding a giant garbage bag of fiber, you think, oh, this is at least 3 sweaters, because it's, 8 pounds. Like, how much does a sweater weigh? But depending on the fleece, you get a lot of waste in a fine wool fleece. So with this one, this fleece in particular, it's at least 50% waste. The ends of the fibers were tippy, meaning that they would break off. And it wasn't a bad fleece by any means, but it did have a lot of waste. This one, the one that I mentioned that cost more per pound that I got from Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool, has so little waste that it's striking. I mean, so little waste in this fiber, or fleece rather. So you really do get what you pay for when you're discerning about what you're buying. So, and obviously the person selling this fleece was discerning of like exactly what they were putting out there. And this fleece, I found out after buying it, came from the Buckwheat Bridge Farm, which is in upstate New York, not far from the Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool Festival. And it's a completely solar powered farm. And I just find like what they're doing is so lovely. And I was so like thrilled that I got a fleece from their flock. They sell fleeces on their website, and they're not cheap. They are like $400 fleeces. So I feel extremely lucky to have found this, and extremely happy to pay what I did per pound for this fleece from them. Even if I do get fewer skeins from this fleece than the other one. It's such a joy to work with, and the experience of preparing it is so much easier on my hands, and so much quicker because it is easier. And so I'm just really happy about this. I find so many colorwork sweaters that I'd like to knit that are worsted weight, and I've been spinning a lot of fingering weight of different colors. So I do need to eventually choose a pattern for that fingering weight handspun sweater, but I'm excited to begin spinning a worsted weight yarn for a future colorwork sweater project. I love knitting sweaters. I know that it's like, I hear people say like it's so popular now, right, to knit sweaters, but it's just very grounding to have a large project that takes up more than a few weeks. And once you've knit one sweater, it'll be of a particular shoulder design typically. So like drop sleeve or set-in sleeve or raglan sleeve or saddle sleeve. And so every sweater, it might be a completely different construction. So you're building on your experience and you're building on your knowledge of constructing sweaters, while at the same time sticking to sweaters. So I feel like I've hit a groove where I'm like, oh, right, I've done a set-in sleeve, I've done a drop sleeve, I've done a raglan sleeve. Maybe I'll try a saddle sleeve eventually. I think a saddle sleeve sweater, that's like where you have this panel that goes up the shoulder, like the saddle of a horse, maybe. That would be cool if I did like a lace design or found a pattern with a lace design, because this is my first lace knitting project, and it was a lot of fun. And I'd love to do another lace project, as long as it's not all lace, because I can see that being a little overwhelming for me still. I did a lot of lace knitting surgery on this project, and it was fun. It's just that I like having I like having a lot of stockinette to do. And when I feel like I don't have enough stockinette to a sweater project, like this one, I'll always have a sock in the background to take with me when I go out. So it's amazing how much hair I get stuck onto my yarn. But I haven't mentioned yet, this is 120 grams. So this skein it looks big because it is big. It's about 200 yards per 100 grams. So it's like it's a heavier worsted. I think a standard worsted's like 220 yards per 100 grams. And so anything less than that in my mind must be heavier. It's a little over plied together, which I really like in its skein form, but I should do a test knit and make sure that or a test swatch of this yarn and just see how much I really like that, the way it handles, if I really like to knit with a yarn that is a little over plied. It is a little thick and thin. There are some strands that are definitely like I guess like a sport weight. And let's see, there's others that are like a DK. So you can see there's some variation there, but it's so much more consistent than my early Handspun yarn. Oh my goodness. Can you even I hope that you can appreciate the difference here. That's a year's work of practice, my friends. And that's really all that spinning is just practice, practice, practice. And when you're practicing, you're messing up a lot. That's just the truth. You have to be willing to let yourself make mistakes. And that's something that spinning yarn has shown me a lot of making little mistakes. And those mistakes, if you don't attach yourself too strongly to the outcome if you don't attach yourself to the result of your effort, those mistakes really don't matter much. It's the experience of letting them happen. And there's so many hand spinners out there on the internet, whether I follow them on Instagram or on YouTube, whose skill I admire so much. But I know that if I just put in the practice, my hands will be able to do that too. It's just I can't let my mind get in the way of it. So if you're new to spinning and this is closer to what you're able to do right now, just keep going. Just keep working with your hands and you will see results. I feel like my journey for spinning, it was I just tried spinning thinner and thinner and thinner until I was spinning a really light fingering weight. And then I thought, okay, there's only so much of this I really need. And then when I sat down to spin this new fiber, I thought, let's just try going thicker and see what happens. And it did come out much thicker than I thought it would. And so rather than categorizing that as a mistake or a failure, I'm just letting it be what it is. It's a little bit thicker and it has its own purpose. Rather than whatever intended purpose I might have had. I actually didn't really, I just wanted to see what it would look like. Because I felt like I was taking a gamble with whether the fiber color would really pan out in a way I liked, and it happened to have done that. So yeah, I brought this into bed with me before I went to sleep last night because I'm so excited about it. I definitely skeined it up a bit messy while talking with you all, but that doesn't really matter so much, I think. Well, this is going to be a short episode this week. I obviously did a lot of spinning on the weekend and less knitting than I had planned, but I got a new hat, which I might actually wear. We'll see. And I'm going to finish my Techno before work today. So if you took the time to watch this episode, thank you so much for watching and making it to the end. And I hope you have a great day. Take care.